Anything I can do better. Little piece of patter, start from first letter. Letters transform to the words go-getter. Polyrhythmatic electrostatic vendetta turns all those who oppose into cheddar. Chunks with blue veins with the battery of light. Sonic force beaming grease, leaves a cheese liquefies, then drops through the level -273 Celsius.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, today I am joined by the great friend of mine from the United States of America land, Spikesmth.
How's it going, YouTube? Spikesmth here. Thank you, Dark. Let's get to this. How ridiculous are these creationists? They have to treat evolutionism as a religion to even try to debate against it. Let's do it.
Creation Science Evangelism presents Creation in Common Sense.
Oh no, we appear to be debating proper creationists here, not your usual YouTube sort. I think I better take one of my special brave pills.
With Eric Hovind.
Hey, welcome to Creation in Common Sense. I'm Eric Hovind.
Is this the same Eric Hovind whose father is in prison for tax fraud? Oh shit.
Do evolutionists believe in miracles? That's what we're talking about today. Joining me is Jonathan Sampson and Joshua Jocelyn from our creation research team at Creation Science Evangelism. Now guys, I got no problem as a creationist and as a Christian believing that God, the creator of the universe, can temporarily suspend natural laws to do something supernatural.
So God can violate the laws of physics. Well, what makes you think that these laws can be changed in the first place? I mean, it sounds like you must be the most gullible fool ever. That anything is possible. Anything. Even if it's impossible, it's still possible. Come on, get real, dude. Alright. Use your creationist thinking to react to my proposition. If you send me $1,000 every month, I will pray that your father gets out of prison. And I will have him out by the end of the year 2012.
If he wants to walk on water, he can do that. If he wants to turn water into wine, or raise the dead, or create life from non-life.
Dark, what do you think?
So you seem to think that life from non-life is some sort of miracle. We know that life can come from non-life scientifically. Recently in Manchester University, British scientists had a team that were able to synthesise 2 of the 4 building blocks of RNA, the self-replicating molecule that many scientists believe to be the most likely contender for the original molecule of life. A real scientist by the name of Dr. Sunderland, with real credentials, believes that he has shown how it is possible to make all the building blocks of RNA from the simple chemicals that existed on Earth about 4 billion years ago.
Don't evolutionists believe the same thing?
Well, ultimately, yes, they do. But in their rhetoric, they're not going to admit that.
True.
They're going to say that we reject anything that cannot be explained internally by natural mechanisms. And so, for instance, you've got an example. Dr. Scott Todd of Kansas State University once stated, even if all the data point to an intelligent designer, such an hypothesis is excluded from science because it is not naturalistic.
Well, Dr. Todd is correct. But curiously, all the information I could find on him through Google was all references from creationists. When I searched him actually through Kansas State, he's an assistant professor of immunology, and it did not seem like any of his work really had to do with evolution directly. You know, he's more in the biochemistry aspect of it. And just because he mentioned a creator in Nature magazine regarding the teaching of evolution in the Kansas public schools, you're quote mining him to manipulate your retarded audience. And what makes you so certain there's anything beyond nature anyway?
This is typical quote mining arguments. Now, we freely admit we are acknowledging the point, but why do you have to quote mine from a source like an assistant professor? I mean, why can't you just at least quote mine off someone higher up the scientific chain, like a 5-year-old child?
Doesn't matter what the evidence says.
Doesn't matter what the evidence says. They have their own miracles.
It does. This really demonstrates that they're not basing their worldview on observed science.
True.
False.
As he said, even if all the data pointed towards this, we're going to reject that. They're not based on observed science. They have miracles like the idea that, given enough time, nature and natural occurrences could turn an amphibian into a reptile.
Yeah.
That any animal can undergo vertical change, not necessarily variations like different colored lizards or different types of
But literally
frogs,
changing from one
but
kind to
actually
another kind.
changing vertically to another type of animal.
What data are you referring to? What information? If you're talking about the Bible, there's loads of other holy scriptures which say something completely different. Different deities. And I'm sorry, none of them are backed up by any sort of scientific evidence whatsoever. And you're talking about it's a miracle for an amphibian to evolve into a reptile. No, that's evolution in action. It's very simple to understand, well, for some people. And what on earth are you on about with vertical change? I don't get it. What do you mean by vertical change? Is that just a sentence you made up? I'd also like to point out in the corner you're trying to take the piss out of evolution by showing just animals changing into humans. Okay. The thing is, if you were to freeze frame halfway through any of those transitions, you won't find anything in nature that looks like that. You won't find a half human, half cat, or half human, half dog. Now, if we were to look at a realistic example, like man evolving from monkey, you can stop at any stage and you will see something that looks like an animal that we know existed through fossil records. So your example in the corner is pretty much pointless.
This is absolutely absurd. You know, I really like the way that Dave Schock had put it when he said that evolutionists depend on assumptions as, quote, magical mantras that theorists invoke when they cannot come up with a viable scientific answer to evolutionary problems.
Well, I couldn't find too much on this Shock character. But come on. Assumptions must be made in all situations because we don't have perfect information. The problem here is that science uses reasonable assumptions, and creationism is one big assumption, and a sack of shit. Ain't that right, Dark?
Absolutely. Today we based all our assumptions on modern day scientific evidence. What creationists do is base all their assumptions on a 2,000-year-old book. Well, basically, back then, we're talking about people who had little or no scientific knowledge whatsoever. So how is that a more plausible, realistic assumption than modern day evidence?
They do. They're welcome to believe that. But they need to understand that's all they're doing is they are believing that. That's not where science is pointing us to.
It's a miracle.
What? Of course it is. I don't believe in evolution like I don't believe in gravity. I know it's a fact. And I've seen the evidence behind it. That's why I accept it as a fact. Admittedly, you have to have a little bit of faith to believe in anything. But mostly, from my point of view, I'll only accept something if there's enough evidence to back it up and it's realistic. What about you, Spike?
Right? My beliefs are based on evidence. The evidence points to evolution and science, and the scientific method seems to be working pretty good.